receive the rod of equity and mercy. May the Spirit guide you in wisdom and grace, that by your service and ministry...
Camilla's crown is on a teetering edge. In the quiet halls of Clarence's house, she was no longer queen, she was a mother. Camilla defied tradition to fight for her son's place. However, Charles chose duty over blood. He dismissed her plea before the Privy Council as if Tom meant nothing. No one saw blood, but the wound ran deep. Now trust is gone, her crown is slipping, and the marriage no longer safe. The game is still on, but no one is playing fair. A bold request. Autumn clung to London like it didn't want to leave. The wind came in sharp from the River Thames, weaving through the streets with a chill that bit through coats and crept under doors. A thick fog blanketed the city, turning everything soft and gray. Clarence's house stood untouched by it all. Stone walls, centuries old, stared back at the mist. The gardens were clipped with military precision. Inside, the marble fireplace glowed, casting a quiet warmth through the room. Camilla sat in a leather armchair across from Charles. A small tea table separated them. She held a cup of mint tea, letting her fingers trace the rim. Her gaze was steady and calculated. She was prepared, having rehearsed her every word, and now the moment had come. "Charles," she said softly, but with pointed intent, "I think it's time Tom received an honorary title. Not to alter his role, Tom has never asked for that. We could present it as a reward for his quiet contributions, reinforcing your image as a modern, inclusive king." Charles didn't respond right away. He set down his cup. His eyes narrowed, just slightly. "Camilla, Tom is not an official member of the royal family, nor does he carry direct royal blood. Granting him a title would break precedent, stir controversy, and invite criticism. The press would accuse us of favoritism." Interestingly, Camilla had expected that. She leaned in, steady and composed. Her voice was soft, but every word landed with precision. "I'll handle the public narrative, turn it into a positive story of progress. Times have changed, Charles. Granting Tom a title shows we value contributions regardless of lineage. Tom has supported the royal family at numerous events, caused no scandals, and maintains a useful network of connections. More importantly, Tom is utterly loyal to you, unswayed by any factions." Charles said nothing. He exhaled slowly, his gaze drifting toward the window. Outside, golden leaves scattered in the wind, carried off by the same autumn breeze that had wrapped the city in silence for weeks. Camilla reached out and placed her hand on his. It was gentle but implicit. It was a reminder of everything they had endured, a quiet appeal rooted in history, not just politics. "You know, Tom means everything to me, and I know you care for him like your own son. This is a chance for you to show that love publicly, to strengthen our family before it's too late." She leaned back. It wasn't a sign of retreat, but she was just giving him space. The room went still. Her heart stayed steady, but her mind moved fast, tracking every flicker in his expression, calculating what might come next. This wasn't just about maternal instinct. Camilla was thinking ahead. A title would do more than honor Tom. It would protect him. With an official role, he'd have insulation from the press, a layer of legitimacy against public scrutiny, and political speculation. It would blunt the tabloids and slow the paparazzi. But more than that, it would shift power. If Tom entered the royal structure, Camilla would have someone inside, her piece on the board, ready for the coming shift when Charles's reign slowed and William's began. This was a strategy. It wasn't surprising that Charles knew that. He sat quietly, thinking. Logic warned him this was risky. The monarchy had only just regained its footing. One misstep could stir backlash, fracture the careful balance he'd spent decades building. But Camilla didn't flinch. Her voice was calm and her gaze steady. She wasn't asking. She was guiding him there. She was the woman who had stood by him, who had waded through scandal and loss, who had filled the silence after Diana. He was finding it hard to say no. "Perhaps I need more time to consider this," he said. A pause, not a promise, but he knew Camilla. Time wouldn't soften her resolve. Days later, the Privy Council assembled in a gilded room thick with ceremony. Camilla rose from her seat, red velvet behind her, authority in her posture. Her voice broke the stillness. "My lords, I propose granting an honorary title to Tom Parker Bowles as recognition for his long-standing contributions to royal charitable endeavors. This is a step for our royal family to demonstrate inclusivity and modernization. The silence that followed was instant and heavy. Eyes shifted, meaning passed between glances. Princess Anne raised an eyebrow slightly as if she'd expected this moment and wasn't surprised by its boldness. Across the table, a few older nobles gave the faintest shakes of the head as if quietly disapproving. Others from the more progressive faction whispered as they leaned toward one another. Curiosity flickered in their eyes, but it was laced with doubt. The room felt heavier by the second. Every glance seemed exaggerated under the cold shimmer of the chandelier. All attention shifted to Charles. A bold rejection. He sat at the head of the table, hands clasped, unmoving. The clock ticked softly in the corner, suddenly the loudest sound in the room. Then he spoke. His voice was calm, but cold. This proposal I cannot approve. We must respect the precedents and principles of the royal family. An honorary title cannot be granted to someone outside the royal lineage, regardless of their contributions. To do so would invite unforeseen consequences, and I cannot allow that under my reign. The words cracked through the silence like a thunderclap. Camilla froze. Her lips pressed into a hard line, draining color from her face. Heat rushed up her neck. She had expected hesitation, or at worst, a diplomatic delay, something that left room to negotiate. However, Charles had rejected her in front of everyone. She caught the subtle reactions. Princess Anne's faint smile, the sideways glances of the conservative earls. No one said a word, but their expressions spoke volumes. Camilla sat down slowly. Her hands gripped the arms of her chair, knuckles whitening. On the surface, she remained composed, but in her mind, there was chaos. She had asked for support, not just for Tom, but for the family they had built. Charles hadn't stood with her. The sting quickly turned and anger replaced it. It wasn't over. Tom deserved more, and she would make sure he got it, whatever it took. In the days after the Privy Council meeting, Clarence House seemed cloaked in something heavier than fog. Camilla didn't explode. That wasn't her style, at least, not in public. She understood the cost of an emotional outburst in royal circles. One misstep, and she'd be painted as unstable, bitter, and power-hungry. And once that label stuck, the palace wouldn't defend her. So instead, she adapted. She shifted from persuasion to precision. If Charles wouldn't give her what she asked for, she'd target what he valued most, and that was his image. Carefully, she activated the network she had spent years cultivating. A few discreet phone calls to old media allies, journalists who owed her favors from another lifetime when she was just the mistress behind the curtain. There were debts, and she was collecting. An opportunity arose at a charity reception at Somerset House. Ancient walls, flickering lanterns, and the Thames were glinting like black glass outside. Inside were the usual crowd, donors, dukes, and reporters with long lenses and longer memories. Camilla arrived in ivory silk. Her smile was perfect. She was every inch the gracious royal consort. But beneath the charm, the anger was still there. She moved through the room with ease, chatting and laughing. However, her eyes kept scanning until they found him. A journalist from the Times, someone who remembered her from the day she was spoken of in whispers. She raised a glass of champagne, leaned in close, and said softly, "Charles is increasingly relying on Princess Anne and William to handle public duties, quietly sidelining his own family. It's sad to see the royal family so divided." The line was planted, and it spread. By morning, headlines had taken over the papers and the internet. Is the king taking sides? Charles favors William and Anne, neglects Camilla. The subtext wasn't subtle. They drew a contrast between the Diana camp and the new family. And Charles, intentionally or not, was choosing sides. The press played it up. Camilla and Tom, once visible, became conveniently forgotten. William and Anne were then cast as the favored heirs on the public stage. Online, a single hashtag caught fire, #Royal Divide. By evening, it was trending worldwide. And Camilla? She said nothing. Charles recognized Camilla's handiwork the moment he saw the first headline. He sat alone in his office at Buckingham Palace, newspapers spread out across his mahogany desk. The warm glow of the desk lamp lit the pages, but his face had gone dark. The strategy was familiar. No direct attacks, just carefully worded insinuations, just enough to raise questions and stir discomfort. It was subtle and ruthless, and only one person had both the motive and the media connections to pull it off. Charles clenched his fist. the betrayal stung deeper than before. To the world, the king was supposed to be above family feuds, a national father figure. If the press framed him as favoring William and Anne while sidelining Camilla and Tom, it chipped away at that image. And worse, it made people wonder, was he still the king of unity, or just the protector of Diana's bloodline? Among royalists, trust was fragile. Many had embraced Charles as a bridge between the old world and the new, but this narrative threatened to recast him as partial, divided, and weak. Inside the palace, the fallout was already taking shape. The court was splintering quietly. Factions that had always existed beneath the surface now had something to cling to. Some whispered support for Camilla. Others dismissed her as reckless. Charles could feel that every decision now risked being interpreted as favoritism. He was now managing a cold war under his roof. Camilla hadn't shouted. She hadn't made a scene, and she didn't need to. She had simply planted a seed of doubt, enough to polarize him in the public eye, without ever leaving her fingerprints. Outsiders would call it gossip, but Charles knew better. It was a warning to him, but he wouldn't let it continue unchecked. A bold confrontation. Charles summoned Camilla to Clarence House. The rain that afternoon was steady, the sky low and gray. Inside, the walls felt damp, the air was heavy. She sat across from him by the fire, calm as ever. Her expression was serene. "I know exactly where those articles came from," Charles said, voice cold, gaze locked on hers. "This is a dangerous game, Camilla. Stop it now before it harms us all. The royal family cannot afford another scandal." Camilla smiled, but her eyes were sharp. "You want me to stop? Only if you agree to grant Tom an honorary title. It's only fair, Charles. You humiliated me in front of everyone. Now I'm just protecting what's mine." He shook his head, jaw tight. His voice was firmer now. "Number, you're pushing this too far, and I won't yield to this kind of pressure. Stop, or the consequences will be worse." She didn't flinch. "I won't stop until you realize this family includes me and Tom, not just those with legitimate blood." Then she stood with quiet resolve. "If you don't yield, I'll keep going, and you know what I'm capable of." Charles sat motionless, gripping the arms of his chair. A wave of helplessness crashed over him. He had hoped reason and affection would sway Camilla. However, she was no longer the gentle woman he once knew. She had become a formidable adversary. He watched her leave, her steps steady on the polished wooden floor, and realized this conversation had driven them further apart. Camilla's next moves were bolder. The narrative spread like wildfire from late-night BBC talk shows to social media posts, even tabloids like The Sun. She quietly enlisted anonymous sources, close friends who confirmed Charles's neglect of her. Their words added a tragic, emotional weight to the story. Camilla isolated in a cold palace. Tom ostracized despite his devoted service. She confided to a friend, "I only want fairness for my son," but Charles seems to have forgotten we're family. The effect went beyond her expectations. Public opinion began to swallow the story. Online polls showed a subtle dip in Charles's approval ratings. Camilla's image morphed into that of a victim, while Charles's reputation fractured, polarized between a fair king and a cold, biased father. Charles sat alone in his office, scrolling through online comments. His heart was heavy. In the weeks after their failed meeting, Buckingham Palace felt suffocating. The press hammered him relentlessly, painting Charles as distant, biased, a king favoring William and Anne while sidelining Camilla and Tom. BBC talk shows buzzed with debate, dissecting the royal divide. Analysts claimed he prioritized his son and sister, neglecting his current family. Meanwhile, old prejudices lingered. Camilla was still the other woman in many eyes, and that stigma fueled criticism. On social media, the fire spread faster. Old family photos were reworked to highlight Charles's aloofness, reinforcing the narrative. Once hailed as a king of fairness, he was now seen by many as selfish, protecting only the lineage of his first marriage. Each morning, Charles read these articles. His hand trembled as he turned the pages. He knew if he didn't act, his reputation would be irreparably damaged. Worse, the monarchy risked its most significant crisis of confidence since Diana's death. So, he couldn't wait any longer. In his private office at Buckingham Palace, Charles summoned his most trusted advisors. The desk lamp cast a harsh glow on Charles's face, highlighting stress lines carved by tension. "We need to strike at her weakest point," he said, voice low but firm. "Conduct an audit of all the charitable funds Camilla oversees. Leave no stone unturned. I want a detailed, discreet, and swift report." For some time, Charles had noticed something odd. Large sums were transferred to a shadowy consulting firm. There was no clear record of what they did. Out of trust, he had ignored it. Now he was determined to uncover the truth. His advisors nodded without question. The audit began immediately. A hand-picked team of independent auditors with no royal ties, dived into the Queen's Outreach Fund. It was her biggest charity, focused on culture and social projects. They worked through the night at Windsor Castle. At first, the books appeared clean. They secured funding for initiatives benefiting poor children, heritage projects, and charity events. However, cracks appeared, like fractures under a glossy surface. Funds were funneled to projects run by Tom Parker Bowles and Camilla's close circle. Hundreds of thousands of pounds were tied to restaurant events tied to Tom. All were labeled as British culture promotion. Lavish dinners at upscale London restaurants where Tom was head chef were known as community education. In reality, they boosted Tom's business network. More cleverly, some money was used by political advocacy groups. These groups pushed to expand Camilla's influence, using seminars as lobbying efforts to amplify her voice in national affairs. The auditors were stunned. They documented a $50,000 transfer to an organization run by one of Camilla's close friends. That money later funded a secret media campaign, timed with the negative articles about Charles. They didn't find direct proof of corruption, but misuse was apparent. A public charity was being exploited for personal and political gain. This broke the royal family's strict financial rules. If this became public, the fallout would be massive, and Camilla's reputation would be destroyed. The press would feast on headlines. Queen misuses charity funds to secure title for son. Parliamentary investigations would follow, and the royal budget could face severe cuts. This could end Camilla's public career, turning her into an outright villain. Tom would be dragged down too, caught in the storm. One late evening, Charles sat alone in his office. The dim light flickered over thick stacks of papers. He flipped through the report, heart pounding with every page. His rational side smiled. He had found the perfect weapon to force Camilla to back down. A bold revenge. But deep inside, Charles was anguished. As king, he could have divorced Camilla, stripped her of her title, and cut all ties the moment she started her campaign against him. Yet, he chose not to. In his heart, Camilla was his emotional anchor in years of loneliness and criticism. To destroy her would be to tear his soul apart, turning his life into a new tragedy. He wanted to give her a chance to turn back. He hoped she'd see reason before ambition dragged her too far. But as she spiraled deeper, he had to find a weapon to restrain her. So he chose a quiet investigation, using what he had as leverage, a way to stop her without dealing a fatal blow. On a dreary, rainy afternoon, with London's sky as gray as his mood, Charles arrived at Clarence House unannounced. Rain hammered the roof of his sleek black limousine. He stepped inside, coat drenched, face worn and tired. Camilla sat in her private drawing room, reading a book on royal history, as if nothing was wrong. The firelight flickered across her face, but did nothing to soften the tension between them. "Camilla," he said, voice low and grave, sitting down across from her without waiting for an invitation. "I'm here to issue a final warning. Your campaign is harming us all. Stop it now before I'm forced to act." Camilla put her book down, her gaze cold without fear and remorse. "Do you think empty words will make me stop, Charles? I'm only protecting Tom and myself. If you agree to grant the title, this will stop. But if you insist on clinging to those outdated traditions, don't blame me for pressing on." Her tone was calm, but sharp. She leaned forward, a faint smile playing on her lips. "You're worried about your image? Then concede. I haven't done anything excessive. Just let the public see the truth." Charles stared at her, pain tightening his chest. He had hoped to catch a flicker of regret, but found only cold resolve. He softened his voice, trying once more. "Don't you see this isn't about Tom or tradition? It's about us, about the royal family. These rumors are tearing us apart, weakening my position. I love you, Camilla, but I can't let you destroy everything for a title." He paused, silently hoping his words would reach whatever was left of her affection. Camilla shook her head, her eyes still sharp. "Love me? If you did, you wouldn't have humiliated me in public. You're worried about your image, Charles, not about me or Tom. I won't stop, not until you realize this family needs to change." She stood, her gesture signaling the end of the conversation. It was clear she didn't take his warning seriously. Turning to the window, she watched the relentless rain, as if this meeting were just a brief interruption in her plans. With no resolution reached, Charles left Clarence House, anger and frustration surging through him. Sitting in the car, he watched the rain pour down the windshield and realized he could wait no longer. Camilla was consumed by ambition, and words no longer held power. He had to act. On the drive back to Buckingham Palace, he called his private secretary. His voice was resolute. "Convene a confidential meeting with the Privy Council." That night, the meeting took place in a secluded room at Windsor Castle. The cold, secretive atmosphere was heavy, the dark walls lit only by the faint glow of antique chandeliers, giving the room the feel of an underground tribunal. Only the most trusted council members were invited: Princess Anne, a few conservative earls, and loyal legal advisors. No official records were kept, and no outsiders were allowed. Everything had to remain confidential to prevent leaks. Charles sat at the head of the long table, his face stern under the flickering light, clutching the thick investigation dossier. He began, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "Ladies and gentlemen, we face a grave internal issue. I have conducted an audit of the Queen's charitable funds, and the findings reveal undeniable irregularities." He slid the dossier toward the center of the table, letting the members examine it. They leaned forward, eyes widening with surprise and concern. Princess Anne raised an eyebrow and spoke quietly. "This is more serious than I thought. Funds diverted to Tom's personal projects and political lobbying." Charles nodded, explaining the details. "Indeed, these expenditures violate transparency regulations and could be seen as an abuse of power. If exposed, the royal family would be engulfed in scandal, but I don't wish to make this public. That would harm us all. Instead, I propose a discreet disciplinary measure. Reduce Camilla's public role, transfer management of the funds to an independent oversight board appointed by the council, and restrict her access to royal budgets and media channels." Tension filled the room as members exchanged cautious glances. An earl spoke up. "This would curb her influence without causing a public stir. But will she accept it?" Charles's voice was firm. "She will have to. This is to protect the royal family, not to punish an individual." After a brief discussion, the proposal was approved by tacit consensus. No formal vote was taken. As Charles stepped out of the meeting, a knot twisted in his gut. He had crafted a careful trap to clip Camilla's wings, yet he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that this move might shatter their marriage entirely. In the days that followed, Camilla began to notice the walls closing in. The invitations she usually received vanished without explanation. Meetings she once led now passed her by. She brushed off the small slights at first, thinking them mere coincidences. But one bleak morning at Clarence House, her private secretary arrived with a pale face and hands trembling, carrying an official notice. "Ma'am," the secretary said, voice barely steady, "Buckingham Palace has ordered the Queen's Outreach Fund transferred to an independent oversight board. All projects linked to Tom have been put on hold indefinitely." Camilla's fingers clenched the letter until the paper crumpled. That fund was the carefully built foundation of her influence. And Tom's events, once thriving, were now frozen in limbo. She moved to the window and saw only one culprit: Charles. Without delay, she reached out to a quiet ally inside the Privy Council. Their brief conversation confirmed her suspicions. Camilla's blood ran cold. The man she once trusted had weaponized the very system she helped build to suffocate her. Fury boiled beneath her skin. She stormed from Clarence House and rode straight to Buckingham Palace. She burst into Charles's office, the door slamming behind her like a gunshot in the silence. The secretary outside jumped. Charles looked up. Surprise and exhaustion etched across his face. "Camilla, this isn't the time." She didn't let him finish. "What am I doing? I'm here to confront the man who destroyed me, who drained my funds and suspended Tom's projects. You thought I wouldn't find out? You used the council to stab me in the back, erase me from this palace." Her face burned with anger and hurt. "You're the king, Charles, but you have no right to do this to me, to us." Charles rose slowly, his face calm but eyes heavy with pain. He had braced for this moment, but not for the storm of fury now facing him. He circled the desk, searching for steady words to bridge the widening chasm between them. Camilla took a deep breath and steadied herself. "This isn't about destroying you. It's about protecting the royal family. You went too far with the rumors and the media campaigns. The investigation revealed irregularities in your funds, with money being funneled into Tom's personal projects and political lobbying. If this leaks, it would be a disaster for all of us. I didn't want to make it public. I didn't want to hurt you. This step is necessary to stop everything. Their conversation quickly spiraled into a heated argument. Neither was willing to back down. Camilla shot back, accusing Charles of hypocrisy. You say it's about protecting the royal family, but you're protecting your image. You're scared the public will think you favor William. You're afraid Anne and the conservatives will turn on you. But what about me? What about all the years I sacrificed for you? Tom doesn't deserve a title, but William gets everything. Her voice cracked, tears streaming down her cheeks. Charles's voice rose, tired and worn. Don't you get it? I gave you a chance, I warned you, but you kept pushing, forcing my hand. This isn't about Tom or William, it's about principles. He reached out for her hand, but she pulled away sharply. Camilla stepped back, wiped her tears, and her tone turned icy. You made me your enemy, Charles. I won't forget this. You'll regret it. A bold separation. In the quiet of Clarence House, Camilla flipped through her sparse schedule, heart sinking deeper into isolation. Rumors buzzed in the press and on social media about her disappearing act. The fallout hit Tom even harder. Royal support dried up and business partners began to pull away. Camilla tried to comfort Tom, but her own heart ached. He had once been her connection to the outside world, but now he was the first casualty. A heavy sadness settled over her. She wandered the long corridors of Clarence House, once a symbol of her triumph and love, now a gilded prison. She saw clearly that Charles had chosen a quiet, ruthless punishment. He hadn't destroyed her, but he had pushed her out of the center of power, turning her into a faint shadow in royal history. Late at night, she sat alone by the fireplace, reflecting on the years she'd spent rising from a quiet mistress to a mighty queen, and now slipping back into the shadows. Her pain came from loneliness and the betrayal of the man she had sacrificed everything for. On a foggy autumn evening, Camilla stood by a window at Clarence House, staring out at London's twinkling lights. The towering buildings shimmered in the drizzle but looked distant and lifeless to her. She pressed her hand against the cold glass, her breath fogging the surface, and realized this was not the end. She had lost her status, her influence, maybe even her love, but a small flame still flickered inside her. She hadn't entirely given up. Maybe one day she would find a way to return and turn the tables. The game of the court was only paused, waiting for a new chance. What do you think about Camilla's fight for Tom's title? Was she driven more by motherly love or a hunger for power? Was Charles's move to audit the charity and cut her role fair? Share your thoughts in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.